He was merely a silhouette on a pathway, solitary, silent, and disappearing into the snow-covered mountains, a man with nothing remaining to forfeit. No one understood why he ascended there, no one was even aware of his absence. Yet something was. A retired K9 German shepherd named Ekko detected a scent the wind was attempting to conceal. And what he discovered, suspended from the brink of a frozen precipice, was not just a man, it was a narrative awaiting revision. This is not solely about survival, it concerns redemption, second opportunities, and a connection between man and dog that transcends mere words. The wind sliced sharply through the pine trees, dragging flurries of snow like phantoms across the mountain trail. Ranger Caleb Hart didn't mind the cold, he'd become accustomed to it, desensitized to more than just the weather. He moved steadily along the path, his boots crunching into the fresh powder, the only sound aside from the steady breathing of the one companion he trusted more than most humans, Ekko, the retired K9 German shepherd at his side. Ekko wasn't just a dog, he was a story, one with jagged edges and scars hidden beneath his thick fur. Once hailed for his heroic work sniffing out explosives, he'd been pulled from the field after a tragic misread cost lives. Most saw failure, Caleb saw a survivor. And in Ekko, he found a kind of silence that matched his own. The two didn't converse much because it wasn't necessary. That morning's patrol wasn't intended to be anything more than routine. Check the trail markers, monitor wildlife tracks, radio in the wind speed. But something was amiss. Caleb felt it in his bones, Ekko did too. Halfway up the ridge, Ekko stopped, not the usual pause, not a squirrel in a tree pause. This was full alert, head up, ears forward, body still, a statue carved from instinct. "Easy, boy," Caleb whispered, brushing snow from his jacket. But Ekko didn't move. Then, just like that, the German shepherd broke into a sprint, darting off the marked path, charging through thick snow with his nose low and tail straight. Caleb's heart skipped a beat, he knew that posture. Something was wrong, really wrong. He followed, slipping once on the slick trail, his breath catching in the thin air as he shouted Ekko's name. The trees thinned, revealing a jagged overlook few ever dared to tread this time of year. And that's when he saw him. At first, it didn't register. A glove, just a glove, black, torn at the seam, barely visible against the rock. But then the hand moved, barely, gripping nothing but snow and desperation. Caleb's eyes widened. Someone was hanging off the cliff. For a second, time froze. No one else was around. No cell service. The only thing between that man and a 400-foot fall was a dog with a broken past and a ranger trying to outrun his own ghosts. Caleb dropped to his knees, crawling towards the edge, snow soaking through his pants. "I got you," he said, without knowing to whom he was speaking. Below, clinging to the crumbling edge, was a man, half-conscious, face pale, lips blue, whispering something too faint to understand. But Ekko heard it. He barked once, short, sharp, deliberate. Caleb reached forward as Ekko braced himself, grabbing Caleb's backpack strap with his teeth, anchoring him. And in that single moment, 3 lives collided, none of them whole, all of them broken, but about to become something no one could have expected. Because this wasn't just a rescue, it was the start of everything that came next. This bond, it only gets deeper. Caleb's fingers encircled the veteran's wrist with all the remaining strength in his body. The man quivered, not solely from the cold, but from something buried far deeper. His grasp was feeble, his gloves saturated, and his breathing arrived in desperate, shallow inhalations. Ekko anchored Caleb from behind, his powerful form braced in the snow, teeth clenched on Caleb's backpack strap, refusing to yield. It was not merely muscle, it was instinct, a trained reflex rooted in allegiance. The man's eyes flickered upwards. His lips moved, chapped and colorless. "Don't waste your strength," he mumbled, like a phantom still whispering from a place halfway gone. "Let go." But Caleb did not. Not then. Not after everything he had endured. He had let go once before, on a night when his brother's number flashed across his phone, and he hadn't answered. He never received a second chance that time. This was his second chance. Caleb locked his jaw, leaned in further, and shouted, "Not happening! Not today!" With one final exertion, his boots digging deep into the snow, he dragged the man upward, inch by brutal inch. The ledge beneath them fractured ominously, flaking under the shifting weight. Ekko growled low, shifting with precision. One last pull, and the man collapsed onto the trail, rolling onto his back, gasping, coughing, barely alive. His body shook uncontrollably. Caleb ripped off his gloves, pressed them to the man's face and neck, attempting to restore warmth to frozen skin. He appeared as someone who had not just fallen. He looked like someone who had jumped, only for fate to intervene. Caleb pulled out an emergency blanket and enveloped him in it. "What's your name?" he inquired. The man did not reply. His eyes drifted shut for a second. Caleb feared the worst. Then, a slow nod. "Jack," he murmured. "Rami." Ekko crept beside them, lowering his body beside Jack's, as if protecting a fallen soldier. Caleb noticed something. Jack didn't recoil. He didn't flinch or stiffen when the dog approached. Most people did, but Jack's hand, semi-conscious, drifted towards Ekko's fur, as if reaching for something familiar, perhaps even safe. Jack's lips moved again. "He was like that too," he whispered. Caleb didn't comprehend its meaning yet, but Ekko did. He remained there, quiet and still, as if listening for something only he could hear. With considerable effort, Caleb hoisted Jack over his shoulder and commenced the slow descent towards the ranger cabin. The snow was thickening again, the wind howling more loudly than before, but the silence among the three of them carried something new, something unspoken. A thread of connection forming in the frost. Halfway back, Jack murmured something else, not to Caleb, but to the air. "I was supposed to disappear," he said. "Why'd you bring me back?" Caleb didn't answer because he didn't need to. Ekko did by walking right beside him, step for step. And in that moment, as frost bit their skin and shadows danced along the ridgeline, something peculiar occurred. Jack reached out and rested his hand on the dog's back, as if it were the only solid thing remaining in a world that kept slipping away. The ranger's cabin stood like a relic amidst the tempest, partially buried in snow, shivering under the wind's relentless onslaught. Caleb kicked open the door with numbed boots, lowering Jack onto a wool-lined cot near the stone fireplace. He moved with quiet urgency, tossing firewood into the hearth, sparking life into the room, while Ekko circled the perimeter once before positioning himself beside Jack like a living bulwark against the cold, the silence, the phantoms. Jack lay there as if he'd borne the weight of the mountain on his shoulders. His clothes were saturated, his eyes dim, but he wasn't unconscious. He was somewhere else entirely. His fingers twitched as if he were holding something invisible or relinquishing something no one else could perceive. Caleb enveloped him in another blanket, poured water, and observed closely. Jack's jaw was clenched, as if each breath cost him something. Outside, the storm intensified, but inside, the fire began to crackle, and so did the atmosphere between them. Caleb sat across from Jack, leaning back against the cabin wall, staring into the flames. Ekko remained between them, his eyes darting between both men as if he were measuring something ancient and fragile. "You ever wake up and not know where you are?" Jack inquired suddenly, his voice raspy, his eyes still fixed on the ceiling. "All the time," Caleb replied without missing a beat. Jack blinked slowly, then chuckled, a dry, bitter sound. "I used to be a sniper, Marine recon. Got out 6 years ago. I was good at seeing things from far away. Funny how I couldn't see myself unraveling." Caleb didn't pose questions. He allowed the silence to speak. "I wasn't up there for the view," Jack stated after a long pause. "I was hoping the cliff would do what I couldn't." There was no judgment in the room, just the sound of wind and fire and breathing. Caleb finally spoke. "My brother didn't call for help. He left a voicemail. I didn't listen until it was too late." He paused, his voice raw. "I've been answering that call ever since." Jack turned his head slowly. "You always talk like that?" "No," Caleb said, "but I've learned it helps when people are about to quit breathing." For the first time, Jack looked at Ekko, truly looked. The dog hadn't moved from his place beside the cot. His head rested near Jack's arm, his body still, eyes alert as if awaiting the order to do something, anything that might save someone again. Jack whispered, "He reminds me of Warden. My old K9. Took shrapnel for me once, never flinched." Ekko's tail thudded once against the floor, a response. Maybe recognition, or maybe just a shared pain that didn't require words. "You believe dogs carry memories?" Jack asked. Caleb looked over. "I believe they carry what we can't." The fire popped. Ekko didn't move, and neither did the pain in the room. But something else began to stir beneath it, something new. That night, when Jack jolted awake from a nightmare, sweat drenching his spine, breath caught in his throat, Ekko was already there, his snout pressed against Jack's hand. No bark, no growl, just presence. Jack didn't cry out, he just breathed slowly, deeply, his hand resting on the dog's back like a man trying to find the pulse of something real again. Outside, hidden beneath the trees, footprints had begun to form in the snow, fresh, slow, uninvited. But the cabin's door remained closed. For now, the storm was still roaring outside. The cabin felt warmer now, not solely due to the fire, but because something unseen had begun to melt. Jack sat upright for the first time in hours, his back supported by a stack of folded blankets Caleb had placed behind him. He stared into the flames as if they held recollections, and perhaps they did. Sometimes one doesn't require much to resurrect the past, merely heat, stillness, and the aroma of wood smoke clinging to old scars. Caleb sipped coffee from a chipped enamel mug, not speaking, not pressing. He knew better. Sometimes a man will converse when silence makes more sense. Ekko lay near Jack's feet, head up, eyes observing every flicker of movement on Jack's face. He had settled there hours ago like a statue fashioned from breath and purpose. Jack exhaled. "I saw kids in the blast zone," he said quietly. "They weren't supposed to be there. We cleared it, but something went wrong. Maybe we missed the signs. Maybe we just didn't want to see them." He paused, his voice tight. "I froze for 2 seconds," Jack whispered. 2 seconds. And it was enough to change everything. When the dust cleared, one of the kids, he was still alive. Burned, screaming. My CO said to keep moving, but Warden, my dog, ran to him, covered him, wouldn't move. Took the second blast so that kid could live. The fire crackled. Caleb didn't move, but Ekko did. He nudged Jack's boot just once, not like a demand, more like recognition. Jack looked down at him, and for a moment, he wasn't in the cabin anymore. He was back in the desert, sand in his eyes, blood in his teeth, a dog shielding a child from a war that never ended. "I tried to get reassigned after that," Jack continued. "They told me Warden was being retired. Said he was done. I asked to adopt him, but the paperwork disappeared. Just like that, gone. They didn't want damaged dogs going to damaged men." Ekko sat up, ears alert. Caleb's voice was low. Ekko was discharged after a failed mission, too. They blamed him for not detecting a buried explosive. 3 men wounded. He was marked unreliable. But I didn't buy it. I saw the report. Someone rushed the sweep. It wasn't his fault. Jack blinked hard. They blamed mine too. They sat in the stillness that only shared wounds can offer. Suddenly, Ekko stood, his head turned towards the door. A low growl rumbled in his chest, not aggressive, but a warning. Caleb stood quickly, stepping to the window, peering into the darkness. Nothing. But the hairs on his neck stood up anyway. Ekko backed towards Jack again, body tense, gaze locked on the door. "What is it?" Jack asked. "Don't know," Caleb said. "Could be an animal. Could be wind. Could be something else." They checked the door, locked. The fire hissed behind them. Ekko didn't relax. Later that night, when Caleb stepped outside to bring in more wood, he noticed something in the snow, just barely there. A partial footprint, bigger than his, leading to the porch but none leading away. Caleb's breath caught in his throat. He stepped back inside, bolted the door, and slid the heavy wooden bar across it. Jack looked at him, reading his face. "You think someone followed me here?" Caleb didn't answer. He didn't need to, and Ekko never blinked. Morning did not arrive gently. It struck the cabin like a silent blow. Not peace, not safety. Merely a heavy, pregnant quietude that caused bones to stiffen before muscles. Caleb had been awake since before dawn, gazing out the frost-covered window with a cup of cold coffee in hand. Something gnawed at the air. Not precisely fear, more like memory honing its teeth. Ekko had scarcely slept. He stood by the front door like a sentinel carved from storm-weathered wood, nose twitching, eyes refusing to blink. Jack, groggy but more present than the previous day, shifted beneath his blanket and noticed it too. "Why is he still standing there?" Jack inquired. Caleb did not reply. He stepped outside into the morning snow, Ekko right behind him. And that's when he saw it, a second set of prints. They did not belong to him, nor to Ekko, nor to Jack. These were fresh. They had approached the porch during the storm and stopped. No prints leading away, no indication of retreat, just presence. Caleb crouched down, measured their depth. Wide, heavy boots. Someone had stood there for minutes, perhaps longer, watching, listening, and left nothing but tension in their wake. Back inside, Jack turned pale. "He found me." Caleb looked up. "Donovan," Jack whispered. "I don't know how, but he's here." The name dropped like a stone through the air. Caleb recalled the file. Donovan Hayes, dishonorably discharged after an assault charge in Syria. Jack had testified, and Donovan had sworn retribution. "You think he tracked you all the way up here?" Caleb asked. Jack nodded. "I think he never stopped." Ekko snarled low. Not a bark, just a deep, rolling sound emanating from his chest, like a thundercloud being warned not to strike. That evening, the generator sputtered, then ceased. The power flickered. Cold seeped in through the corners of the wood. Ekko paced. Jack clutched his side. The quiet was no longer still. It was moving, breathing, lurking in the shadows like an animal observing its prey. "I have to leave," Jack stated. "If he's here for me, I can't bring it to you." "You're not going anywhere," Caleb replied. "Not like this. Not injured. Not while he's out there. I can't sit here and wait for him to come through that door." Jack snapped. "You won't have to," Caleb said calmly. "He already has." Jack froze. Caleb retrieved something from the table, a photograph. It had been left at the doorstep sometime during the night, tucked beneath the porch mat. It depicted 3 men in uniform, arms slung over each other's shoulders in front of a Humvee. The edges were scorched. One face was crossed out. Another had been circled in red. Jack stared at it, his breath catching in his throat. This was taken 6 years ago. Looks like someone held on to it longer than they should have. There was no punchline to follow that, merely the realization that they were no longer alone, that someone out there knew precisely where they were, who they were, and what they were fleeing from. That night, Jack did not sleep. Neither did Ekko. Because sometimes the most perilous entity is not the storm, but what ensues after it, once you believe you have weathered it. Before dawn, when the air still hangs heavy with the ghosts of the previous night, and the world has not yet decided whether to continue breathing or freeze, Jack departed. No words, no audible footsteps, just the quiet scrape of his boots slipping into snow, and a door left slightly ajar. Caleb didn't stir initially, but Ekko did. His ears flicked, his nose twitched, a silent alarm clock designed only for those who carry the weight of too many unfinished endings. Outside, Jack moved like a man burdened by a curse, not afraid, just resigned. He thought if he could lure Donovan away, perhaps Caleb and Ekko wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. Maybe for once, someone else wouldn't have to pay the debt he'd been evading for years. He left a note on the table, "Thank you, but I've got to finish this on my own terms." The mountain showed no concern for closure or intentions. Halfway down the eastern trail, the sky was a pale bruise of dawn and the snow lay knee-deep in silence. That's when he saw them, 3 shapes, low to the ground, weaving through the white like smoke. Wolves, young, thin, hungry, their eyes locked on Jack with the kind of patience that indicated they'd been observing him long before he noticed them. Jack's instincts activated. He stepped back, twisted on a patch of ice, and pain shot up from his ankle like a live wire. He collapsed sideways into the snow, breath stolen, ankle broken. The wolves began to circle slowly with calculation. They weren't rabid, they were simply tired of being hungry. And that's when Ekko arrived. No warning, no build-up, just a blur of black and tan fur slicing through the snow like a missile with a heartbeat. He charged head-on into the nearest wolf with a force that shook the trees. Jack looked up, gasping, barely believing what he saw. Ekko snarling, standing over him, fangs bared, tail rigid, eyes locked on the threat as if they were back in combat. Caleb came sprinting seconds later, rifle slung low, shouting something Jack didn't hear over the rush of blood in his ears and the deep, primal growls echoing around them. One warning shot was enough. The wolf scattered, torn between desperation and instinct, but not before Ekko took a hit, a gash along his side from a frantic claw. He whimpered once, staggered, but didn't fall. He stayed right there beside Jack, pressing against him like a wall that refused to break. Caleb dropped to his knees beside them, panting, pulling Jack upright while his eyes scanned Ekko's side. "You're both idiots," he muttered, his voice thick. Jack laughed, a raw, disbelieving sound. "You followed me." "I brought backup," Caleb nodded towards Ekko. Jack looked down. Ekko was bleeding, shivering, still watching him as if the mission hadn't ended yet. "You didn't have to come," Jack whispered to the dog. But Ekko leaned in, rested his head against Jack's chest, and let out the faintest sigh as if he were exactly where he was supposed to be. Back at the cabin, Caleb stitched the gash as best he could. Jack lay wrapped in blankets again, this time with Ekko curled beside him, not like a protector anymore, but like family. And for the first time since the war, Jack let the tears come. Not because he was hurt, but because someone came for him, because a dog bled for him, because maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he believed. Outside, the trail was vanishing under new snowfall. But this time, they weren't running. The tempest had finally subsided, leaving the mountain cloaked in a blinding white stillness. Peace, however, had not returned, not even remotely. Inside the cabin, Ekko rested by the fire, his sutured side rising and falling slowly. Caleb moved about with his customary stoic calm, yet his hand kept drifting towards the old hunting rifle mounted above the door, just in case. Jack sat near the window, his ankle propped, crutches nearby, his eyes scanning the tree-line for something he hoped would not materialize, but knew it would. And then it came, a single, slow knock. Not frantic, not loud, merely a quiet, chilling tap as if someone were saying, "I'm here. I never left." Caleb's blood ran cold. Jack stood before he even realized it, forgetting the pain in his ankle. Ekko did not bark. He stood, tail rigid, head lowered, all instinct, all alert. Caleb moved to the door, motioning for Jack to remain back. When he opened it, no one was there, just cold air pressing its weight inside. But something had been left on the ground, a crumpled piece of paper, folded like a letter. Caleb picked it up, unfolded it. The photograph fell out, the same scorched photograph. 3 soldiers. One crossed out, one circled. This time, a message was scribbled on the back in shaky red ink. "I told you I'd finish what they wouldn't let me." Jack's chest tightened. It's him. Donovan's here. That night felt longer than all the others. Caleb reinforced the door. Jack checked and rechecked the windows. Ekko paced like a soldier itching for orders. Every creak in the wood, every gust of wind, every flicker of flame in the cabin's lantern light. Everything felt like a countdown. "Why didn't I just finish it at the cliff?" Jack muttered. "Because you still have more to fight for," Caleb said, not even looking up. "And Ekko didn't cross that ice to watch you give up again." Jack looked at the dog, his breathing steady, his loyalty silent but louder than any voice. He reached down and touched Ekko's head, this time not with hesitation, but with reverence. "He's not just a dog," Jack whispered. "He's something else." Caleb nodded. "He's what's left when everything else leaves." The next morning, tracks were everywhere. Boot prints, deep ones, leading around the cabin, peering through windows, disappearing into the tree-line again. Donovan was playing a game, a slow, taunting psychological chess match, and he possessed the advantage of obsession. Jack took a deep breath. "If he wants to end this, fine. But it's going to be on my terms." "You're not going out there alone," Caleb replied. "I wasn't asking." "You don't need to," Caleb said. "We go together." And Ekko, he didn't require permission. He was already waiting at the door. The trail was quiet. Not silent quiet, but the kind of quiet that feels as if the mountain itself is holding its breath. Snow crunched beneath their feet in rhythm. Caleb leading with sharp eyes, Ekko walking between him and Jack like a barrier forged from muscle and memory. Jack limped forward, slower but determined, each step a declaration. "This ends today." They spoke little. There was no room for words, just the steady pulse of something inevitable pulling them forward towards the overlook. A clearing they all knew was the logical conclusion to a path carved by years of silence, pain, and everything left unsaid. Donovan was already there, standing at the edge, his coat whipping in the wind, a rifle strapped over his shoulder. His posture wasn't wild. He wasn't shaking or raving. He was calm, focused, like a man who had spent 6 years scripting this exact moment in his head, replaying it over and over until reality bent to match it. "You finally crawled out from your guilt hole," he called without turning. "Didn't expect the ranger and the mutt." Jack stopped a few feet away. "You don't have to do this." Donovan turned, his eyes hollow. "Don't I? They stripped everything from me. My name, my badge, my life. Because of what you said in that courtroom. You chose their rules over our truth." "I told the truth," Jack replied. "You know that." Donovan took a step forward. You told the version that let you sleep at night. Caleb kept his hand near his sidearm. Ekko didn't move, his body low, eyes locked on Donovan like a fuse ready to spark. Donovan raised the rifle, not aiming, just holding it. This doesn't have to be messy. I just want what's fair. You disappeared. I had to watch my life rot in front of me. You don't get to come back whole. Ekko growled, low, threatening. A sound that made the trees shudder. Jack stepped forward. I'm not whole. The air shifted. I've tried to end this 100 different ways. Pills, guns, that cliff. But I'm still here because someone, kept pulling me back. Not a therapist, not a brother. A dog. A damn dog I didn't know 2 weeks ago. He looked down at Ekko, his voice cracking. But he saw me. He chose me. Donovan's grip loosened just a fraction. And if someone like that thinks I'm worth something, Jack said, then maybe you are too. But it starts with dropping that weapon. Today doesn't have to be another wound. A long pause. Then Donovan raised the rifle again. But before he could aim, Ekko lunged. A flash of fur, teeth, momentum. He knocked Donovan sideways, the rifle skidding across the ice. Caleb tackled him next, pinning him down as Jack limped to the weapon, kicking it away. It was over in seconds. No bullets, no blood, just a breath held too long finally being released. Later, when the cops arrived, when Donovan was cuffed and loaded into the snow-crusted SUV, Jack stood at the overlook. Same cliff, same silence, but this time he wasn't hanging off the edge, he was standing tall. Ekko sat beside him, pressing his head into Jack's hand. Think he'll get help? Jack asked softly. Caleb joined them. That's up to him. You already chose your path. Jack nodded. Then I guess it's time I figure out how to walk it. Weeks later, Jack took his first steps down a rehab trail. No crutches, just a slow, steady pace, and Ekko at his side, wearing a vest that read, retired, but never done. He wasn't just a dog. He was proof that sometimes the ones who carry the most pain are also the ones who bring the most healing. And Jack, he wasn't lost anymore. He had been found by a dog who never gave up.